Okay, so this is the quick tips part of the lesson. So I'm going to show you a few things here. The first that we're going to start off with is viewing commands. So we're going to learn how to use our mouse to zoom and pan. And I know this sounds pretty basic, but some of you have never used this software before, any software like this. So you'll find this helpful. So your mouse, you've got a left click, a right click, and a wheel in the middle. If you use the wheel in the middle and you scroll up, it'll zoom in and out of your drawing. And notice that wherever my arrow is for my mouse, it zooms in and out to that spot. Okay, so you kind of have to put your mouse arrow over where you want to zoom in and out and then use the mouse wheel. The second thing you can do is if you hold down the mouse wheel, you can pan, so you can push the drawing around. Right? It's not moving any parts of the drawing, it's just moving the screen so that you can see. So say I zoomed in here, but I really want to see over here. Well, then I can pan to get to that part of the drawing. Now, if you double click on the mouse wheel, so double click, it's going to zoom to the extents of the drawing. So this one's really helpful. A lot of times when you're drawing or inserting things in your drawing, you're going to be like, it will be way up there and you'll be like, oh no, where'd my drawing go? Nothing came in. If you double click on your mouse wheel, you'll find that it centers everything and zooms into the entire extents. And you'll see you actually do have something in your drawing. The other thing you can do is in 3D view, you can hold down Shift and the mouse wheel, and then you can move the mouse around to rotate your drawing. Now that's like using the cube up here. You can also left click on the cube and then hold the clicker down and rotate that way. But if you have trouble with the cube, hold down Shift and then hold down the mouse wheel, and that will let you also rotate around the drawing. And the next tool that we're going to learn how to use is the hide and unhide tool. And you'll find this very useful again throughout your time using this program. So I'm going to zoom in 3D and I'm going to click in on this roof. Say I wanted to see inside of the building in 3D, but I can't because the roof is blocking my view. If I click on the roof, I can right click and I get a whole bunch of other commands that are accessible for that roof. So the one I'm looking for is this hide in view. And when I go down to it, I see hide in view, element, category, or by filter. If I hide an element, what it's going to do is it's going to hide that single roof that I have selected. If I hide category, it will hide all roofs in the drawing. And then if I hide by filter, I can select what I want to hide. So I'll show you all of them. So I'm going to say hide in view element, and it only hid that roof. Now let me undo. And I'm going to click on it. I'm going to show you if I right click and say hide in view category, it would hide, it should have hid both of those roofs, so we didn't do it. There we go. So it hid both of the roofs. Okay, if I hit undo again, and let's say I drew like a big window here around everything, and I right click and I say hide in view by filter, this will allow me to filter out what I want to hide. So I can say add, and I can select my filter. Now, that's a little bit more advanced. So let's just stick to the hide by category or hide by element. So now, let me go back, and I'm going to right click, hide in view, element, and now I can see inside of my building. So I see some structural systems, and I can see the layout of the rooms. Now let's say I'm done and I want to put the roof back on. Well, don't redraw the roof because it already exists in your project. What you want to do is you want to come down to the View Control panel and click on the little light bulb. This little light bulb is called Reveal Hidden Elements. When I click on it, anything that's hidden is going to be pink. So you see it says Reveal Hidden Elements and everything's in pink. So right now the roofs are hidden. So I'm going to click on the roof and I'm going to say Unhide Category and then close this, and it will put the roof system back. Now it got a little confused because I had hidden some roofs before. Unhide Element, and then there we go. Now all of my roof systems are back on the building. So those hiding elements allows you to see in the building without deleting anything. You could do the same thing down here for those curtain wall systems. Okay, the second tip I'm going to show you is how to use temporary dimensions. Dimensions are located in the Annotate tool. So first of all, I have an align dimension. I And what I can do is I can pick the wall center line and individual references. I could pick the wall face, and I could pick entire walls. I'll show you what each one of these tools does. So let's leave on wall center line, individual reference. So now when I go to dimension, it's going to pick the center line of the wall. See the blue dashed line that shows up? So if I pick this point, that means I can dimension from the center line of this wall, and then wherever I pick next is going to be the end of my dimension line. So let's say here we pick, and I dimension it. That's an individual reference. I'm going to delete it. You can also do from the wall face. So now notice when I pick the wall, it's going to pick the face of the wall. So that's the outside edge of the wall. And then I can move over and I can pick another outside edge of the wall, and that's going to be my dimension. Those are all individual dimensions. If you want to dimension quickly, you could go align. You could start from wall face and you could pick the entire wall. So now if I pick an entire wall and I pull down, it's going to dimension that entire wall from start to end point. The other thing that you can do that's kind of cool is you can do line dimensions. You could do entire wall and then select options, and you can dimension the openings and the centers of the openings. So remember that if you're doing a wood frame building, everything's going to be dimensioned to the center opening, the walls, or excuse me, the windows and the doors. If you have a masonry building, you're going to dimension the widths of windows and doors. So let's say centers. We'll say okay. Now if I pick this wall and I pull the dimension down, really cool is it dimensioned right to the center of those windows that are inside of this model. So it saved me from having to individually pick each one of those points. All right, other things in this model, before I move on to temporary dimensions, is I just want to point out these are tags. So this is a window tag. Now if you're ever not sure what something is on the drawing, you can hover over it and it will tell you what it is. But again, we have to become familiar with these symbols that are used typically on architectural drawings so that we can, when we go to add these to the drawings, we know where they're located and we understand what we're doing. So these are going to be window tags. These up here are door tags. And then we have our exterior elevations right here. All right, now let's take a look at those temporary dimensions. So I'm going to zoom in on this door right here. When I click on an object, you're going to see that these dimensions come up for that object. These are called temporary dimensions, and I know they're temporary because they're blue in color. On the end of each of the dimensions, you see these little dots. These are called grips. Now, what the grips allow me to do is to move where that dimension starts and stops. So for example, if I wanted this door to be spaced 4 inches from the face of the wall to the face of the door, I'm going to have to adjust my grips. So if I click on the grip, it actually moves it. So if you keep clicking on it, what it does, it moves it from right, center, and then to left. This is the wall face. When I say wall face, I mean the face of the wall. When I say the face of the door, I mean that I want this grip to be associated with the face, this face right here. So I can try clicking this dot again. Okay, so now you see that there's a space between the door and the wall, and it's 3 9/16 of an inch. Let's say I want that to be 4 inches. If I type 4 inches inside of this box, it moves the door 4 inches. So the way temporary dimensions work are they move whichever object you have selected. So if I have this wall selected, the temporary dimensions that show up down here, if I adjust these dimensions, they'll move this wall. They won't move the door. They're going to move whatever wall is selected, or whatever object is selected, excuse me. So again, I select the door, I can move my grips, and then it moves my door. Let's try it again over here. So I'm going to go to this door. Now let's say that I want it to be 2'6", but I want it to be from the wall face to the center of the door. So again, I'm going to click on my grip until it goes to the face of the wall, and then I'm going to type in this box 2'6", and then it's going to push my door over 2'6". Now let's say I wanted to make those temporary dimensions permanent. If you scroll out a little bit, you're going to see this little dimension symbol here. And of course, if I hover over it, it says make this temporary dimension a permanent dimension. If I click on that, it becomes a permanent dimension, meaning it puts the dimension on the drawing. I can actually see it. So now we see that this door is 2'6" away from the wall face to the center of the door. If I want to adjust the door, I can't click on the dimensions to do it. I have to, again, click on the object which then brings back my temporary dimensions, anything that turns blue, and I can now start typing in here the dimension that I want to adjust it to. You're going to have to mess around with that a little bit to get used to it, but I hope that makes sense. The other thing that you can do with dimensions is you can space things equidistant from each other. So let's say that I have all these windows here, and I want to space them evenly apart. So if I dimension between the windows, let's just do it like this, and then I pull that dimension string down, you're going to see this EQ show up. If I click on EQ, what it does is it spaces all these windows so that there's an equal distance between each of them. And then it notes it as EQ in the dimension. Now I can adjust the dimension if I double click on it. Oops. Sorry, sometimes that does that. If I double click, or if I edit, you can adjust that dimension. So instead of saying EQ, it actually says the size of the dimension. That's going to be, you can also do it in the properties box where you say value and then hit apply. This is going to be an exercise that you'll work with again in Revit. So I'm going to put it back on equality text. All right, now here's something to notice. Now if I move this window, so I try to move it, you're going to see that it moves that whole group of windows. So it just tried to move this window over, and then I got an error warning. So when you get an error warning, it will show up in orange on Revit, and it says insert conflicts with joined wall. So if you see it saying this wall and this window, I'm trying to put the window where a wall is, and that's not good. So I don't want to ignore my warning. I want to close out of it and then do undo, because I don't want to do that. But if things are equally spaced, what I'm trying to show you is that they will all move together as one equal group. Now, if I was to delete this EQ dimension, I'm going to get another warning. And make sure that you're reading the warnings carefully in Revit. So it says that the EQ constraint is being deleted, but the elements are still constrained, meaning those windows are still equally spaced. If I don't want them to be equally spaced anymore, I would say unconstrained, which then would allow me to move the windows individually. See how they're not following each other anymore. If I wanted them to stay equally spaced, I would have, when I got the error message, I would have said, okay, and then although I can't see the EQ, I would know that if I move these windows, it's still moving the whole group together. Just one more thing about warnings that I wanted to show you. This is an error right here. If I click on this window, you're going to see that if you have a warning or you did something wrong in your drawing, it's going to tell you about it automatically or immediately as it did before. But then if you forget about it or you say okay or you just ignore it, if you click on something, if you see this triangle with the exclamation point, that means you have some sort of error in your drawing. And if you click on that, you can see what the error is. So it's saying that there's a warning. There is a conflict between the wall and the window, okay? And then you would say show, and it's going to show you in orange where that conflict exists, and then you'll want to fix that because you obviously don't want your window or your wall running into your window. So make sure that you're carefully looking at your drawing. I know it's tempting to try to draw fast, but you have to go a little bit slow in the beginning just to get used to everything. So that wraps up some of the quick tips that I wanted to give you. In the next module, we will learn about the modify tools.